Welcome to the Brass and Woodwind Shop. This is the fourth video in the restoration of this old York cornet, and today I'm going to try to get the dent out of this bell. You can see that there's a dent right where the brace was, and if you turn it over you can see the dent on the other side of the bell. When you see a dent like that, usually what happened is that the instrument got stepped on or sat on, and that got one of the dents in there, and then somebody tried to bend the bell back themselves, and then that got the dent on the other side. That's probably what happened in this case too. Another thing that you can see is that there are some dents that look like they came from the inside pushing out, and probably what happened is somebody had a mandrel that you used to get dents out of the bell, and they tried to shove it in there, but it would not fit because that metal is so narrow right there. So they tried to push it in, but it would not go all the way in. It just created dents from the inside to the outside. To fix this, I cannot just push some mandrels in and hope that the dent comes out. This is going to be a difficult dent to get out. Another problem is that there's a crack on the bell right there, and it probably goes almost all the way through, if not all the way through the instrument. If that is not taken care of, the crack will probably spread and it will become a lot worse. And if you look on the other side, you can see that there is another crack that is starting. It has not gone all the way through the bell yet, but it probably will if I'm not very careful. When the bell is round, it's hard to bend it back and forth, but when something becomes that thin, it will bend back and forth fairly easily. So this bell has probably been bent back and forth many times over the years, and that's what's caused these cracks. If things get bent too many times, they start to give way and crack like that. Because of all that, I'm going to have to be very careful when I get these dents out, not to expand the crack at all. Something that a lot of people don't realize about brass instruments is that the brass on the instruments can be a lot of different hardnesses. You can take the same brass and make it hard or soft depending upon what you do to it. If you take the metal and bend it back and forth and work it, that's going to make the metal harder. Because it's harder in the one spot where it got bent, it will bend somewhere else when you try to bend it back. And then if you bend it too many times, what will happen, where it's hard, it will not bend as easily. So instead of bending, it will crack. But if the metal is softer, then it will bend easier without breaking. So the softer metal actually is less likely to crack than the harder metal. When you get any dent in a brass instrument and then you take the dent out, then the metal is harder where the dent was. And if you get dents in the same spot many times and remove them many times, the metal will get even harder yet. So there's a limit to how many times you can get a dent in the same spot before it starts to crack. A lot of times you see that in tubas where the bells get dented a lot. If the bell of a tuba gets dented too many times, it will start to form cracks in the bell. When the instruments are being manufactured, they work on the metal and they change the shape of it, and that hardens it. So what they do periodically when they're working on the bell is they'll heat it up, and it's called annealing. They will anneal the metal and that will soften it so that they can work on it some more. They heat it up to around 1,400 degrees Fahrenheit. And I think that's about 700 degrees Celsius. What that does is it softens the metal, and then it allows them to be able to work on it some more without any damage occurring to the instrument. Another thing about the hardness of metal on brass instruments, there are some places on the instrument that are hard and some that are soft and everywhere in between. And even one part of an instrument, the bell, can be many different hardnesses. Usually they want the bell to be hard from about here to here, and what that does is that gives you a better sound. And then they want it to be soft in this area, and then it can be a little harder along this part. Usually where the crook is a little harder because it's worked a little bit more as they are manufacturing the bell. And then this part is usually a little softer. So even among one part of the instrument, there can be several different hardnesses and softnesses of the metal. On professional level instruments, a lot of times what makes the instrument sound better is the hardness and the softness of the metal, and where it's hard and where it is soft. On this instrument, I'm going to need to soften the metal around here so that I can get the dent out easier. If I leave it as hard as it is and try to get the dent out, it will probably crack and destroy the instrument. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to heat the metal up from about here to here. And I'm not going to heat it up to 1400 degrees because that will make it too soft and it will destroy the silver plating that is on here. So what I'm going to do is heat it up to around 800 to 900 degrees Fahrenheit, and what that will do is it will soften it a little bit so that I can work with it, but it should not cause a lot of other damage to the instrument. Another thing I need to be careful of is if I heat any soft solder joints up to that temperature, the soft solder will crystallize and it will make a big mess. And the crystallized soft solder will cause a lot of problems for me when I'm done. So what I need to do is, since there were 2 soft solder joints right here, and I did clean them up, but there's still a little bit of soft solder on that, I'm going to have to clean up all of that solder before I heat this up. The way I'm going to do that is I'm going to buff it out. But I also need to be careful because of the silver plating. If I buff off the soft solder, it will take the silver plating off around this. There is a way around that though, and I'll show you what that is. What I'm going to do to protect the silver plating when I buff it is put some masking tape on the silver plating. I have the masking tape on to protect the silver plating, and it just leaves this part bare so that I can buff off the solder. I got the solder all buffed off, and I'm down to the brass, and on that area where the buffing wheel could not get, I used a little needle file to file off the solder that's in this area. So now I can pull off the masking tape. I got the other area cleaned up too, so all the soft solder is off of the instrument in this area. So now I'm going to heat this up to probably around 800 to 900 degrees. Okay, I'm going to heat it up until I see the metal starting to tarnish. I do not want to burn the silver plating, and you can burn the silver plating if you get it too hot. That's probably good. Now I'm going to turn it over and heat the other side. Okay, yeah, I don't think I want to heat it up much more than that. And that will probably soften the metal up enough so that I can start to get the dents out. I may need to heat it up once or twice more while I'm getting those dents out, but I'll see what happens first. These are the tools I usually use to get dents out of trumpet bells, and these are tapered. They start out larger at one end and then they get smaller at the other end. These 5 mandrels I usually use to get dents out between about here and here on cornet and trumpet bells. And this one is called a throat mandrel, and that's used for right here. Because the tubing has been smashed in so much and it's so thin, I'm going to need to start out with a lot smaller mandrel though. So I'm going to use this one, which is usually used for trumpet lead pipes, but it should get in there to the point where I can open up the metal just a little bit so that I can start getting in with one of the larger mandrels. This mandrel, even though it is small, will not get past the dent right here. So what I'm going to do is try to push this dent out a little bit, just enough so that the mandrel will go past this dent. Then I'm going to open this up enough so that I can get a little bit larger mandrel through there. I'm going to have to be very careful because if I push down on this part of the bell, it's going to bend here again, and I don't want to bend this any more than it already has been bent. So I'm going to have to put the force on this side of the bell to try to get this out. Usually I would hold an instrument like this to get the dent out, but now I'm going to have to hold it like this and try to open that up a little bit. Okay. I can tell this is not going to be easy. Okay. Oh, there we go. Okay, we did open it a little bit, so I'm going to try to push it on farther. Remember, this is tapered, so the farther it goes on, the larger it opens up. Now that the mandrel goes through here, it's not going to bend as much, so I'm going to try to push that down a little bit farther. There we go. Okay, this crack is opening up. I was hoping that would not happen. So I'm going to have to either put a patch or close that up in some way. I'm not sure how yet, but I'll figure that out when the time comes. Now I'm going to try a mandrel the next size up. This mandrel is a little bit larger and it should fit through there. Yes, it does. Okay. So now I'm going to open it up just a little bit more. To Dent has opened up a little bit more, and you can see that the tubing is starting to come out this direction, but there's still this crease right here, and I do not like the way that that crease is. Where the crease is in here, it's going to try to take this metal here and push it together. As soon as I can, I'm going to try to get this crease out. But first of all, I need to open up this tubing some more. So I'm going to go to the next size mandrel. Here's the next mandrel. Okay, I'm going to push on that. Yeah, and this crack is opening up wider. It's definitely going to need to get patched. I worked up to a larger mandrel, and now the dent is opened up quite a bit. So what I'm going to do is try to get some of these dents out with some of my mallets. I have the rawhide mallet and a delrin mallet and a canvas mallet. There's a high spot. I'm going to tap on it and try to get the high spot down. And then where there are the low spots, I'm going to use the mandrel to try to push those up. This end of the canvas mallet works well on some of the dents that are really sharp, like in this area. So I'm going to tap on those. And I'm using my finger to guide the mallet. Now on this first round, I'm not going to get the dents out all the way. I'm just looking to make them a little bit better than they are. And then I'm going to go to a larger mandrel. I'll probably have to use a trombone mandrel since I think I'm on my largest trumpet mandrel. But I just wanted to start pushing these dents down so that the larger dents, the dents with the large creases in them, can come out to some extent. Okay, the dents are better than they were, so I'm going to see if I have a trombone mandrel that's a little larger than this one that I can use to open this up a little farther. I got the larger mandrel, and now what I'm going to do is put this on here, and I'm going to use the mandrel to push out some dents now from the inside. And I don't know how this is going to work. These dents might be too hard. The metal feels like it's getting hard, so I'm going to heat this up and anneal it once more to try to soften this up again. I'm going to try again to heat it up to around 800 to 900 degrees without doing any damage. And you can tell how hot it is by the tarnishing of the brass. Right there you can see how that's changing colors. So you don't want it to turn orange, but you do want it to start to turn black. Okay, I'll turn it over. And you also have to be careful not to burn. Oh, it looks like it's getting a little too hot there. You also have to be careful not to burn the silver plating. So if you see that start to bubble, you stop immediately. Okay, that's probably good. I annealed the bell once more to soften it, and I moved up one size of mandrel, and this is the largest mandrel that will fit past the dent. So I'm going to put that past the dent, and then I'm going to tap the dents down some more. Since this mandrel is almost the same size as the inside of the bell, tapping the dents down will push the dents down to where the mandrel is. That will help with some of these really sharp dents. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go around the bell one more time and tap down the high spots. And when I'm done, what I'm going to do is put in a smaller mandrel and see if I can push the dents out at all from the inside. Now I'm going to go to a smaller mandrel and try to push some dents out. I'm going to use the tip of the mandrel to try to push the dents out from the inside. And that's usually the way I get dents out, but when they're really sharp dents like this one, they are hard to do that way. So now that I've gotten them out a little bit more and rounded out the metal, I'm going to try doing that. I'm going to find where the mandrel is, and you can tell where the mandrel is because when you push down, you can see a tiny little bump in there. It does not leave a mark, but you can tell where it is because of that tiny little bump. The bell is not sliding around very well in the mandrel, so what I'm going to do is put some wax on the end of the mandrel, and that will help it to slide a little bit better. Okay, I'm going to try to find where the end of the mandrel is. Okay, there it is. I'm going to try to push some of those dents out a little bit. They won't come out all the way because these dents are really sharp. And what I mean by a sharp dent is a dent that has an angle to it. If it's more smooth, they come out easier with these mandrels, but when they're a sharp dent, they're really hard to push out. So I'm going to just do as good as I can with this, and if it gets a little bit better, then I am headed in the right direction. I know it's hard to see in the video, but these dents are coming out a little bit, not much, but a little bit more. After I've worked my way around the bell all the way, I'm going to take the small mandrel out, put a larger mandrel in, and try tapping again. And that's the way you get dents out. You just go back and forth between tapping and pushing until the dents are out. I've been working on this bell for about an hour now, and this is where I am, and it's a lot better than it was. It's most of the way round, but there are still some dents in it, and these ones with the sharp creases, those are the hardest ones to get out. So what I'm going to do now is I think I'm going to tap on these harder. When I was tapping before, I did not tap very hard. You want to be careful how you get these dents out, but I think I'm to the point where I can tap these harder and get those out faster. I'm going to put the larger mandrel on there and tap those dents out. I put the larger mandrel back on. I'm going to put this on so that the mandrel goes past the dent. And I'm going to use the delrin mallet now. And this is a little heavier and it can take down the dents a little faster. So I'm going to line that up. I want to make sure that I hit where the dent is. The dents are most of the way out, but there are still a few places that have very sharp dents that are still there, and I'm having a hard time tapping those out, so I'm going to try something else. This is part of a drumstick that I cut off, and I ground down the end to a fairly small area. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that right over where the dent is, and then hit that with, and this is a rawhide mallet. This is a heavy rawhide mallet. It's going to give a lot of bang to this, so I'll put it right over where the dent is and then give it a good hit, and then I'm just going to keep going around the bell where there's a sharp dent and try to take down that sharp dent. That took the dents down a little more, but they're still there and they're being very stubborn. So what I'm going to do now is take a dent hammer, put that over the dent and tap on it. I do not usually do this. In fact, I think this is the first time I've ever done this in 26 years of repair. But I think this is probably one of the worst dents I've ever worked on. So you do what you need to do to get the job done. I'm going to use this method wherever it's needed, and I'm getting pretty close to being done. I'm just looking at this. It's most of the way done. I'm almost done with the dents. I'm just going to push the dents out one more time with a smaller mandrel. I'm going to find the end of the mandrel and then push up some of the low spots. There's the dent in the instrument, and there are still ripples in the metal, and really the only way to get those ripples out is to sand it down with sandpaper and then buff it out and replate the whole thing. But I'm not going to do that to this instrument. It is a lot better than it was, and I'm going to be happy with it the way it is. There is a crack in the metal, and it does go all the way through, and it does leak. So I am going to have to patch that up, but that is for a different video. Thank you for watching. In the next video, I'm going to patch the crack in the bell, and then I'm going to solder the bell onto the instrument, and we'll see if we have time for anything else after that gets done. Please subscribe for more band instrument repair videos.